For the first time in any of my videos, Tony Soprano is not the main monster. This time, Tony is just the obvious monster, the one you can see right away, the one everyone already understands before the scene even starts. The more interesting one is the man walking toward him, the man who thinks he is better than Tony, the man who looks at Tony's world like it is dirty, violent, and beneath him. And yet, when his own world cannot solve his problem, where does he go? He goes straight to Tony Soprano. Because sometimes people do not hate the monster, they hate needing the monster. And sometimes the person judging you from across the table is just as bad as you are. Maybe even worse. They set this meeting outside a pork store. It's kinda ironic how there is literally a pig behind them while these Orthodox Jewish men walk up to Tony Soprano asking for help with the religious divorce. And by the way, I'm probably going to butcher some of these names, so just let Paulie give the official disclaimer real quick.
The Jew with the black clothes and the curls and everything?
They're called Hasidim. Hasidim, but I don't believe them.
Before Shlomo even sits down, I need to explain to you guys why he is coming to Tony in the first place, because this whole situation is already uglier than it looks. In Shlomo's world, a divorce is not just about civil papers. His daughter needs a religious divorce too, something called a get, and Ariel has to give it to her. This is Ariel, by the way. He is married to Shlomo's daughter. So if Ariel refuses, her life stays trapped in the marriage inside the community. She can be legally separated on paper and still spiritually tied to the man everyone is trying to get away from. That is the power Ariel has over them. So when Shlomo comes to Tony, he is coming because every respectable kind of pressure has already failed. Family and religious pressure did not move him. Community pressure also did not move him. So now Shlomo is standing outside a pork store, in front of Tony Soprano, looking for the kind of pressure Ariel may still understand.
You know the story about my daughter and her husband?
Yeah, he knows.
Shlomo starts with the daughter because that gives him the cleanest entrance into Tony. He walks in carrying his daughter's suffering because he knows what that does to a father sitting across from him. Then he makes it more direct.
Do you have a daughter, Mr. Soprano?
So Shlomo goes right through it.
What would you do if your daughter was abused by her husband?
That is the move. He brings Meadow into the room without saying her name. He takes his daughter's situation and pushes it across the table until Tony has to imagine it happening inside his own house. Shlomo is using fatherhood-like leverage. He wants Tony's first reaction to come from the stomach, from the place where violence can start sounding like love, and Tony gives him exactly the line he was fishing for.
Talk to her.
Yeah, and ball-peen hammer.
Now Shlomo has what he wanted. Tony has already pictured the husband as someone who deserves pain. Before the motel comes in, before the percentage comes in, Shlomo gets Tony to say the violent part out loud. Then Shlomo gently collects it.
I think you understand my anger.
He takes Tony's ball-peen hammer and turns it into anger. A cleaner word, something a father would get. A word that makes the violence feel earned. Shlomo is already laundering the request through emotion. He wants Tony's brutality, but he wants it wrapped in something he can respect. Then he adds,
He's not only harming my daughter, but he's mocking our laws of marriage.
Now he gives Tony the full package. The daughter is being hurt. The law is being insulted. Ariel is making Shlomo feel powerless as a father and as a religious man. This is where Shlomo starts sounding righteous, and that is exactly where we have to be careful with him, because he is telling the truth in a way that helps him. Shlomo is also using every piece of that truth to pull Tony closer to the job. Tony hears it, and he immediately puts the conversation back into a safer costume.
I can help you with, and if I can do it, that would make me happy.
Everyone here knows what kind of help this is, but the meeting needs polite words so the people asking for violence can keep breathing normally. Hillel reacts with that small sound. That little sound is the first honest thing in the meeting. Hillel hears Tony's clean language and cannot swallow it. His father is sitting there letting Tony dress this up as waste management and friendship, and Hillel's face starts leaking the truth. Tony catches it immediately.
What's your fucking problem, Al?
The polite version of Tony disappears for 1 second. That is the warning shot. Hillel barely makes a sound, and Tony turns on him. So Shlomo turns to his son and starts protecting the image. Shlomo is telling Hillel to hide the disgust, keep the family face steady. Sit here and let the lie work. Because Hillel's reaction threatens the whole performance, it reminds everyone that this respectable father is sitting with criminals and pretending the word help covers what he came for.
I do understand you're being shaken down for 50% of your motel, is that right?
That is Tony reading the situation clearly. Ariel is holding the get over the family because he wants a piece of the motel. That is the part Tony understands instantly. Silvio even says the old rabbi goon squads used to smack husbands around to force the divorce, until the DA shut them down. That detail strips away even more innocence. Shlomo's world already had muscle for this kind of problem. Its own pressure, its own men who could turn religious law into bruises. That system got shut down, so Shlomo came to Tony's version.
All right, 25%. He wants 50, we get 25.
That is the moment Shlomo's father act gets exposed. Tony takes the daughter's story and converts it into a cut. He treats the trapped marriage like a business opportunity because Shlomo brought him a problem with money attached to it. Tony is crude about it, but he is also honest in a way Shlomo keeps avoiding. Hillel hears the number and says,
I don't understand.
Tony turns on him immediately.
That's because I'm not talking to you.
Hillel is the only one still reacting like this whole thing should feel wrong, and Tony refuses to even make him part of the conversation. The son is sitting there with moral disgust on his face, while the father and Tony are already inside the transaction. Tony has found the real adult in the room. The father who came here pretending this was about pain and protection is now listening to percentages. Hillel is still trying to process the dirt. Shlomo is already close enough to bargain with it.
Du hast beschatte Keulen hier. Punkt für die Rav in der Meise. Sofort ab.
Tony is already Tony. The real act of creation is Shlomo giving Tony a righteous excuse, a target, and a payday. Shlomo wants to believe Tony is the dirty part of the story, but Hillel is watching his father build the bridge to him piece by piece. And Shlomo still makes the deal, because by now the truth is already on the table. He came here to use Tony. He came here because Tony's world can do what his world wants done quietly. And later, when he looks at Tony like some lower creature, this is the scene that makes the judgment feel so rotten. Shlomo thinks he is above Tony. This meeting says otherwise. Tony sends Silvio and Paulie to the motel, and they begin by trying to reason with Ariel. The offer is simple. Give Shlomo's daughter the religious divorce, leave the family business, and walk away before the situation gets worse. Ariel hears them out with a strange calmness. He smiles, keeps his voice controlled, and refuses. Silvio explains the consequences more directly, yet Ariel keeps talking like the two men standing in front of him are an inconvenience he has already prepared himself for.
So please, don't embarrass yourself any further. Just leave.
I'm not embarrassed. You embarrassed?
That calm starts getting under their skin. Silvio came expecting a businessman who would understand pressure. Paulie came expecting somebody who would understand fear. Ariel seems to understand both perfectly, and he has already decided how much pain he is prepared to absorb. So the conversation becomes physical. No matter how many punches this guy gets, the answer stays the same. He starts talking about Masada, about people who chose death over surrender.
You ever heard of the Masada? I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I fear no evil, for thou art with me.
Yeah, hold that thought.
Now Silvio and Paulie understand the problem Shlomo handed them. Ariel has found a way to make the beating support him. Every punch gives him another chance to prove that he can suffer longer than they can threaten him. He has turned the room into his own little religious trial, and in his head, dying here would give him the final word. They have dragged Ariel from his own lobby into the back of a pork store, and he is still talking about dying with his dignity intact. Tony calls Hesh because Hesh understands the beliefs Ariel is hiding inside. Ariel has already brought up Masada and declared that he is ready to die. At that point, another beating only gives him more suffering to survive. He can fold death into some heroic picture of one man surrounded by enemies, holding his ground until the end. Hesh gives Tony a threat that destroys that picture.
Maybe he's willing to go to the world to come, but if he's stuck here on this earth, I know one thing that no man wants to go through life without.
Castration leaves Ariel alive. He would lose his sexual function, his ability to father children, and the part of his body most closely tied to the masculinity he has been performing through this entire standoff. The religious consequence goes even further. Traditional Jewish law placed severe marriage restrictions on a man whose genitals have been deliberately destroyed, including a prohibition against marrying a Jewish-born woman. The distinction between natural injury and damage inflicted by people also carries legal weight in those sources, so Ariel hears an entire future collapsing at once. His body, his family line, his marriage, and his place inside the religious structure he keeps invoking are all sitting inside Tony's threat. He could imagine himself dying like the men at Masada, still convinced he won. Castration would send him back into life carrying the defeat every day. Hesh understands that Ariel is prepared for pain. He has never prepared himself for that future. Once Ariel gives the get, Tony returns to the motel for the 25% they agreed on. The job is finished. Shlomo's daughter has her divorce, Ariel has been forced out of the marriage, and the family has escaped the 50% demand hanging over the motel. Shlomo greets Tony with a new number, 15%.
It was business that brought him around.
You wanted 50%?
It's crazy how quickly the moral emergency becomes bargaining. During the first meeting, Shlomo reached across the table through Meadow. He asked Tony to imagine his own daughter being abused and tried to use that anger to pull him into the job. Now his daughter has what she needed, and Shlomo acts like Tony has arrived with a surprise invoice. He asks Tony to reconsider. He reaches for history, inheritance, and is even ready to tell him this deal was promised to him 3,000 years ago.
As the Talmud says.
I don't give a shit what he says.
Tony's answer is vulgar, and it cuts straight through the performance. The Talmud stayed outside the first meeting while Shlomo needed help. It enters now, after Ariel has signed, exactly when 10% of the motel is leaving Shlomo's hands. Tony reminds him that they had a deal. Shlomo keeps talking like 25% was some number Tony invented after the work was done. He wants to rewrite the agreement while standing inside everything Tony delivered for him. Now Shlomo finds the price offensive. Tony gets closer, grabs him, and the language changes again. Shlomo calls him a golem, a Frankenstein, a creature without a soul. He says it with disgust, almost relieved to finally place himself above Tony again. Tony is the man pressing him against the wall and demanding property. Shlomo can look at that face and tell himself all the filth lives there. Meanwhile, Shlomo chose the target, agreed to the price, waited while Silvio and Paulie beat Ariel, accepted the divorce, kept the motel, and changed the deal after the violence had served its purpose. Calling Tony a golem becomes Shlomo's final attempt to wash himself clean. The old story gives him a convenient role. A respectable man creates a monster for protection, loses control of it, and becomes its victim. Shlomo loves that version because it erases the part where the creature followed his instructions perfectly. Tony went after Ariel, he forced the divorce and returned for the payment Shlomo promised him. The monster never turned on its creator, it completed the job and sent the bill. And Shlomo has the audacity to act betrayed. That stairwell finally places these two men beside each other without all the polite language from the first meeting. Tony applies pressure with fists, threats, and his hand around Shlomo's collar. Shlomo applies pressure through his daughter's pain, religious authority, family shame, and a promise he plans to shrink once he has what he wants. Tony calls his demand 25%. Shlomo calls his leverage tradition. They both take a person's weakest position and squeeze until the terms improve. Tony is a monster. Everybody knew that. Shlomo's ugliness lives in the way he hires one, benefits from it, cheats it, and keeps judging it from above. He wants Tony beneath him while depending on Tony to protect his daughter, save his motel, and enforce the outcome his own world failed to produce. By the end, Tony is almost the more honest man in the stairwell. He names his price before the job. He comes back for the same amount. Shlomo arrives with a new percentage, 3,000 years of history, and enough religious language to make cheating Tony sound holy. He calls Tony soulless after borrowing his hands. The word golem lands on Tony. The stain stays on both of them.